This is Allie Schillinger, a student athlete at the University of North Florida. Schillinger, an avid surfer, has an extremely unique talent. Not only can she catch some gnarly waves, but Schillinger also handcrafts many of these surfboards on which she rides.
So my first step when making a new surfboard is I decide on what kind of board I want to make as far as longboard, shortboard, and then I decide on the dimensions like width, thickness, rocker. The rocker is the curve of the board. So if you took a flat edge and put it across the board, you'd be able to measure rocker between the distance of the nose and where that flat edge is. And then as soon as I decide on what type of board I want to make, I go to the store, the distributor in Jacksonville, and I pick out a blank. And a blank is basically a big chunk of foam that has a wood stringer in the middle of it. Once I have my board, I cut the actual shape of the outline of the next step is I take it and I take down the thickness. So the piece of foam that you actually get is super, super thick. So I go in and I use a planer, which is an electric machine that kind of cuts, depending on what you want, let's say 1/8 of an inch out of the foam with each pass through. So I go and I take it down and I measure everything as I'm going to make sure that it ends up the thickness that I want. And all that, I use a piece of paper that I write down all my measurements on, and I'm constantly looking back and forth to make sure that everything lines up with those measurements that I originally intended. I then work on my rails. You make sure you get the angle correct, and then you pull a piece of sandpaper across the edge, and it makes this nice smooth rail that you can kind of grab on and feel with your hand and it becomes this super nice surfboard looking type piece of foam that's basically ready to go. And then you get into the glassing phase. So I cut out my fin boxes. I use a type of router, and basically like a cookie stencil is like a good word to put it, that has the shape of the box that I'm going to glue in there. I cut out a little circle in there. It plops in with some glue, and that's good to go. Basically, final stage of a surfboard, what makes it that nice hard actual surfboard type feel is I glass it. So I take fiberglass, I roll it over the top, I cut it, I make sure everything is perfect. On this board that I made, I used 2 layers of 6-ounce fiberglass on the top and 1 layer of 6-ounce fiberglass on the bottom. This is my favorite part of the process just because it's super satisfying and it's fun. It's a little messy. You pour, I used a polyester-based resin over the fiberglass, and it cures in the sun. So the second you put it out in the UV light, it becomes hard, like super hard, like a rock. And that's what creates that hardness shell on the outside of the surfboard. And once you are done sanding, you have a brand new surfboard and you're ready to go into the ocean. So once I have this brand new board, I'm ready to go into the ocean. I wax it up, put wax on the top so I can get my feet to stick. I prefer to put a stomp pad on the back. Basically another piece of foam you stick on the back so your back foot has something to really grip onto. It's super exciting being able to go into the ocean and on something that you made. Most of the time I come home, hose it down, get the sand and salt off of it, and I put it in a rack that I made for storage in the house.